So I'm here to talk to you about my one astronaut rock opera entitled Onward to Mars.
I am intrigued.
This is the one I thought I was going to.
Am I close?
Set it down on the desktop. No, set it down right there.
This is
And then look. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad we have tech support. All right, so my name is Dan Wilcox. I am a artist, engineer, musician, and performer. I'm currently finishing up my my Master of Fine Arts at Carnegie Mellon University. And a little bit of my backstory. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama. Basically, this is where Space and Rocket Center is and Space Camp is. My dad is an aerospace engineer, and I grew up around NASA people, and my dad specifically worked in missile defense. So if you've ever met anyone who had to figure out how to hit a bullet with a bullet, then you know the kind of people you're dealing with. There we go. All right, this needs to be over here. So, I'm an artist, and for me, since I have, my background is actually in computer engineering before I went more into the music and art area, into what's called new media. For me, my role as an artist is to do research and development for humanity. So art for me is not specifically to create interesting visual environments, etc. It's more specifically more in the area of philosophy, more to try out ideas, to create situations which bring about questions and have people looking into new things in ways that they hadn't thought of before. And a little bit of my background for this project, for the Robot Cowboy project, was basically rock and roll mixed with interesting ideas into headwear, which became Robot Cowboy, because basically I had this and I wanted to make it real. So I made it real. This became a character. This whole area is called Robot Cowboy Cable Madness, and it was to create a cyborg performance system, a completely wearable system. So instead of performing with a computer like this, like me next to a computer, like, I wanted to be able to run around and just do this. And run around. So the best way to do that is to integrate everything onto yourself. And of course, the interesting thing is, I actually have to be able to do this. I have to solve a lot of the same kind of things that you have to if you're going to build an autonomous system like a spacesuit, which is kind of where I ended up going with it in some way. So this whole system is running if you want to get into the details of it, an embedded Linux system with a bunch of custom software and custom real-time audio software, so that I could actually run all of my sound live with all of my sensor input. And I had a screen for a head so that I could be a mobile VJ as well, as you can see. Brought the guitar in later. This first part of Robot Cowboy is called Cabled Madness. And at one point it was even performed on a building. This is the Ars Electronica Center in Linz, Austria. And the entire building is surrounded by 1,048 individually addressable LED panels. And I use the whole side of the building as a giant screen. And you can see that small screen there is my head. And what's on the wall behind me is a giant version of that. And there are other manifestations of using the system without the helmet. So I started working on some upgrades. Don't worry, I'm getting to the Mars angle pretty soon. I just want to give you some backstory as to what the hell is Robot Cowboy. I started working on an upgrade to this system because the old stuff was a old Zybernaut wearable from 2003 that was literally falling apart because I was beating the crap out of it. So I decided to try and rebuild it using an iPad, which kind of got me into an interim setup. But I was not satisfied. I didn't want to only just update the hardware so I could keep doing the same thing. I wanted to move into a new conceptual area, something with a little more basis, as opposed to, look, I'm crazy funny monkey guy wearing all sort of electronics and making sound. So when I went to Carnegie Mellon and got in touch with my artist side after giving them lots of money, basically I got in touch with my roots, which was my father working in aerospace, me being a shuttle geek when I was growing up. And I wanted to choose a subject that was relevant for what was going to be happening, within our near future, and something I was really interested in. And I hit upon the idea of Mars, not a Mars as in a sci-fi Mars, but a now Mars using current technology, or new future Mars, actually going, which of course I don't have to explain that to this audience. So the idea was to create a new show, a Robot Cowboy 2.0, where I combine my current performance practice with the musical stylings of my favorite band, Devo, the performance and spoken word prowess of Laurie Anderson, and Carl Sagan's cosmic wonderment on the Red Planet. That's to be the show. And a little of the backstory as I started to dig into things. So at first I thought Mars, and then I started to dig into the backstory. So these guys. And this is actually from Marshall Space Flight Center, which is in Huntsville. So we had plans to go to Mars, but 40 years later, I guess 45 years later maybe, I always thought this is such a great, if you haven't seen this cover, that sort of sums up everything as to why we're here right now. And also to why I'm trying to bring this idea of going to Mars to other audiences. So definitely I was inspired by this and Mars One. Of course, some people question that, but I still think that there are some interesting things that could happen if we go. So those are the parts of the presentations where I have to explain to people that don't know all that stuff. So the central question of the show that I'm trying to bring to people is not only just like, hey, why don't we go to Mars? And also, hey, why don't you think about it actually being a possibility? Is to have the audience leaving my show asking the question of, would I go? And I decided to answer it a little bit by going through this process of, I'm an artist, I'm not an actual astronaut, I only play one on TV. I'm not a scientist, but I can pretend to be one. That's the luxury of being an artist. So I say, all right, let's play with this idea. Let's do some R&D. So I say to this question, fuck yeah, let's do this. So we'll do some training for the show. So I went to the Space and Rocket Center in my hometown and learned a little bit more about Mars. Tried to get some comparisons at the Carnegie Science Center about maybe some more differences, what I'm dealing with. Also, training myself in a small environment, getting used to sitting on the space toilet while I use my phone. I was also training on surface activities before I went to the MDRS. And this is actually the very Mars-like red clay soil in Huntsville. And also trying some vertical traversing on the Mars climbing wall at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And of course, one must envision what it would be like to stand upon another world. So that, with my preparations ready for my research at the NDRS for the show, I went to the Mars Desert Research Station. I was part of Crew 119. We were there December 1st to December 14th in 2013. And I gave a presentation earlier, which at 2 o'clock, which was about my book. I was a crew journalist, and I recorded all of my pictures, my tweets, my day-to-day notes, and my day-to-day journalist reports into a book, which I have a couple copies if you'll want to buy one for $10 each. Or you can go to my website and download the whole copy in PDF and check it out. So this was basically the idea was I wanted to get a foot on the ground, like personal perspective of what it would be like to be there. And also, since we were the first crew of that crew rotation, we treated the mission as if we're the first ones here. We're like, this is the first landing perspective. You know, what is it like to walk over a hill and be like, oh wow, no one has ever been here before. What does it even mean to me as the person making the step and being like, oh crap, I'm the first person to stand here. That's the book. And also thinking about this idea of being a colonist, and maybe not so much Little Planet or Little House on the Prairie, but Little Capsule on the Planitia.
Huh.
Did I say that right? Planitia? Is it Planitia? How do I say it? Planitia? Planitia. Come on, someone tell me, how do I say it? I don't want to say it wrong anymore.
I always pronounce it Planitia.
Planitia?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, go with that.
Little Capsule on the Planitia. Thank you. So again, returning to this interesting idea of evolution. And another important aspect that was really driving the formulation for the show is that, again, thinking about this idea is like, not only my perception, but my audience. Because I'm producing the show for more of a general audience. It's not specifically for y'all, for people that already know a lot of what's going on. I mean, I definitely want it to be work for you, but I also want it to work for everyone. And to think about, how can I draw people in their thinking about, oh, we should go to Mars, we could go to Mars. How to draw them away from here and cross this line and to go to here. Because I think in a lot of ways we're sort of mucking around in people's minds right there. So I wanted it to be a lot less of this and more of this, which of course that's not actually real, but you know, it works. So to make a live album and a live show, to take my new tools for space creation, those are some samples I brought back from the MDRS, and musically to combine it with this idea of, I still needed something from, I decided I didn't want to make it completely realistic, because what I learned at the MDRS is if you're going for complete realism, a big part of the show will be boring because we'll be filling out paperwork. If you've ever been to the MDRS. That was probably the biggest thing I learned, is being an astronaut is not completely about the right stuff. It's also about keeping in contact with your resources and keeping in contact with mission control, being super important. But anyway, to bring a little bit more of the leeway into, since this is an artistic project, I also wanted to have a little fun with it and bring some fiction in too. It sort of gives me a little a little area around the concept. So the whole reason for going to Mars in this show is that, oh yeah, I'll talk about him later. There it is that in 2015 we discovered the fundamental frequency of the universe. Bong. From this tone can be constructed the harmonics of life, death, and the movement of the cosmos. Although we can so far only comprehend 1/billionth of the available data, we do know that each celestial body sings its own song, and those who wish to live upon a new planet's surface must know its melody by heart. Basically, this means, I being an astronaut, I have to go ahead of everybody else, and I have to discover what the song of Mars is in order for us to be able to live there. And a lot of the music, I'm greatly influenced by both Devo and, if you know of experimental jazz composer and performer Sun Ra, you should check him out. Egyptian-themed experimental jazz. And I also thought it was interesting. I believe this is a John Cage visual score, and for some reason, this always reminded me of orbital mechanics trajectories, maybe viewed from an oblique plane. So one of the main things I got out of the MDRS is how important the simulation suit is, not only for other people looking at you and believing the simulation. If you think of a theatrical situation that I'm planning the show for, it totally works in the same context. But also, how do I want it to perform? I want to be hindered in the same way that I was on the MDRS, because the way that I move and the way I have to deal with things, you should actually be hindered. That was actually one of the important things about the old robot Catway with the head and all, and the weird electronic stuff, was that by embodying the computer, by trying to have to wear everything, I also have to deal with the things that I can now do and the things that I now have to deal with. Like, now I'm plugged into the wall, I can't actually run around that much. That's all part of it for me as a performer. So I decided my first step was that I wanted to move away from the Apollo-style suit and make a simulation of the MIT compression biosuit. So So I did a bunch of research into it, and we started to assemble some materials. So enlisted my wife. So we started to build a cheap mock-up. Bring some different materials together. But I also had some plans for different promo material using this suit. But it didn't work out. It just doesn't. The feedback that I got, basically we tried this as an experiment. The feedback I got was, "What are you wearing? It looks like a night stockings or like flannel underwear or something." It didn't work. And it's because it was funny because I also got that feedback from an artist. Her name is Pat Olesko, and she's known for making she's a crazy old school performance artist. She's known for making very large scale, ridiculous things. Muscle suits and just like huge, very performative things. And she's like, the problem with that is like it doesn't fit. It might be a spacesuit to you and to people that know what it's kind of mocking up, but to everybody else, that's not what's in their mind as to what a spacesuit is. So we did some other mock-ups, but we ended up going back to the bubblehead from the MDRS because in the end, that's what people at this point expect a spacesuit to be. So if I'm going to reach out to an audience and try and get their attention with a spacesuit, they better at least know what the hell it's supposed to be. And we also decided to merge a bit more with the Apollo style because, again, to go back to that. So this time now I replaced the belt, the Batman belt is now my personal audio. Right, I'll skip past this stuff if you want the details on how everything works. My portable life support system is now my portable audio support system, which inside there is basically, if you want to know, a new embedded computer called an Udo running all of my software with a built-in sound card and a battery and everything. And this is actually influenced by the MDRS suit. I can plug in, I can recharge my battery, and I also have an air blowing mechanism like the MDRS suits because I need the air to blow around my visor so as I'm singing I'm not fogging myself up. And this is an example of some of the software that I've written. So of course every great mission needs a mission patch. That's the real one. I have some here if you all are interested for cheap. And every great mission needs a bumper sticker. I have some of those as well. And every great mission needs an Earth return vehicle, which my wife is a talented artist in her own right and works with large-scale sculptural mylar. So she built me an Earth return vehicle for the show. So now I'm going to finally show you some pictures for the show, and then we'll do some questions after. So this was the show, the first version of the show. I've only done it, the whole thing once so far. Was February 8th in Pittsburgh at the New Hazlitt Theater, which is a great black box performing arts theater. That means a reconfigurable stage with a very large-scale projection, so 30 by 30 square foot projection. And before we did the show, everyone was waiting outside. We did a press conference where I had an interviewer interviewed me as the single astronaut going out on his one-way trip to Mars. And people were actually very intrigued. They said, "Why would you go? What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to live? Are you going to be able to leave? Like, why would you want to go, etc." So it was actually interesting to. I had read up on a bunch of what people were saying, those who applied to Mars One, and tried to get a good mix of answers prepared. So I have, and I cheated. I ordered my astronaut wings from, I believe, space.com, so don't tell anyone at NASA. So we did the show. There's a good portion of spoken word where basically I'm talking about, as I'm traveling to Mars, I'm worried about this and planning about that, and what are we going to do in this situation? And trying to get across this point of what's realistic, what are we actually going to have to deal and to talk about it in a way that anyone can understand it. Of course I mix it in with songs in between. Right, there's the Earth return vehicle again. This is the transformation for when we're on Mars, and then I put the suit on. So that little button thing is part of the electronics, which allows me to change to the new songs. And I have, of course, an electromagnetic sensor apparatus, also known as a theremin. And that is a fake soil penetrometer like the one at the end there. It's actually a musical instrument controller. And we ended with a fade out into Galactic Night. Another component, the component which keeps me from graduating, is that I need to turn the show into basically a book. That will be my written thesis. Another artist book, similar to this, except it will be like the Apollo sort of mission wrap-up journal. I'm going to put the whole thing into a Onward to Mars wrap-up. And again, one of the things is I have a whole bunch of interesting quotes I pulled from, especially discussion forums. This is from a YouTube video, and this is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do this whole thing, which is, this is probably what 90% of everyone else who is not keyed into what's going on space-wise says. That they would be love to be alive to see this kind of stuff for real, and of course we can only dream. And that's my problem with it, is why don't we clue them into actually thinking about it and questioning? And what's happened with the show is, especially after that first show, and then a few other small theme shows I've done afterwards, is people have no idea. They're like, really? Like, I thought we weren't going to space anymore because we don't have the space shuttle, or like we can't go anymore because of this and that. Like, no, totally. These things are happening. This can happen. I also give them the. Don't quote me on this. I just allegedly, I remember hearing it somewhere. But in I think 2010, we spent more money air conditioning personnel in Iraq and Afghanistan than we did on the entire NASA budget. People like that are really kind of blown away by that because they assume, oh, the NASA budget must be huge, right? It's like, well, I don't know, give them another percent, etc. So it's not that people, I think if anything, talking to you guys as an audience, it's not that people don't care. It's more that they just don't know. And in some ways, we're not reaching them in a way. And with this show, I kind of just want to take my own little bit and get out into different audiences. So I've given a presentation about the Mars stuff to kids at the Carnegie Science Center, and I've talked to a bunch of people, at least in Pittsburgh, etc. And we're planning on taking the show on tour when I get a sort of updated version of it. Again, this is how the suit looks without the bubble head. But yeah, I want to get the word out in my own way, jumping around on stage. That's Robot Cowboy Onward to Mars. You can check me out at danamenica.com. Also, for some reason, it's not in the slide, but robotcowboy.com is the Robot Cowboy webpage. And I have swag, if you're interested. Also, I have a couple of these books, $10 each. If not, you can go to my webpage and download it for free. It's a PDF, and I'll make an EPUB maybe later today. Any questions?
You said you want your audience to leave asking the question, would I go? And you said when you did the mock press conference, you looked up other people's reactions to similar questions. I want to know what's your answer.
Yeah, this is interesting. And depending on the context, in the artistic context and theater context, everyone wants me to say yes. Hell yeah. And I say, all right, if it was 10 years ago and I was 20, yes. If it was 10 years from now and I was 40, 45 maybe, I would say yes. But right now, we want to have kids. We do. So I can't do that yet unless my wife wants to go, and she doesn't. She's like, I don't know about that. Maybe in a little while. So that's maybe the boring, realistic adult answer. Also, the other problem I would have is that under certain circumstances, I get motion sick, and I'm not going to pass the astronaut physical. I think I literally wouldn't be able to not upchuck in my spacesuit. But for now, being an artist, I can pretend to be an astronaut. Any other questions?
Is there any way that you think you would involve the audience more in your performance to get them to really ask that question even more?
I want to, this project, I'm not, at this point, I'm sort of in between, like I said, I'm an artist, engineer, musician, performer. I sort of span a lot of things. One reason that I wanted to take the time to build the suit is that I want to, I'm thinking of a performative kind of situation where we basically imagine some sort of downtown, maybe downtown Houston, and all of a sudden there's a capsule there, and then the next day I come out and then I start exploring downtown Houston, And people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm exploring Mars. I'm like, why are you doing that? And then we begin this dialogue. If you think of a one-on-one dialogue, there's all sorts of like performative actions, and more than just the context of a theater show. To me, like this is like with the last Robot Cowboy thing, I started that in 2006, and I did that basically different variations of it all the way to 2011 or so, and then it's been 2 years or so of getting into starting this thing. So now I see this as just the beginning of like, I'll make more stuff. I'll make more than songs. I'm getting into trying to make some print material, etc. I guess the answer would be I want to take it into different contexts and in different media. As to what yet, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Anyone else? Sure.
It's not in any way affiliated with Space Cowboy?
Yeah.
Is it in any way, are you in any way affiliated with the Space Cowboys?
No, I don't know who they are. All right, that's it. Cool. Thanks, guys.